Alright guys, today I'm going to be going over Amara God builds for endgame. I'll be going over two builds today, as well as the gear I recommend for both builds. It's going to be pinned comment in the comment section with timestamps for everything I'm going over today. But the first thing we're going to go over today is Amara's godly ad clearing, and pretty much this build is really good for anything in endgame that's not for farming bosses. This is good for anything besides farming bosses. So let's get started. Amara has three trees. She has the green tree, the blue tree, and the orange tree. The orange tree is for like elemental damage. The blue tree is kind of just her overall damage build. And then her green tree is for sustainability. Now for the mob clearing, I'm just gonna call it her mob build, her ad clearing build. You're gonna want it. We're gonna be using actually all three, barely. You'll see what I mean by that in a second. But first thing, I'm just gonna rush through what points go into what, and then I'll be going over it briefly afterwards. So you want 3 in steady hands, 5 in anima, 5 in tempest, 1 in dread, 2 in wildfire, 1 in deep will, 3 in indiscriminate, 5 in sustainment, and 1 in forceful expression. You're also going to want to use allure and ties that bind. Now, you're going to come over the green tree and you're going to do 2 in a personal space, 5 in root to rise, 5 in helping hands. These, you want to split 5 between these two. Personally, for what I do, which is slaughterhouse, that's what I farm, I find that arms deal just is much more helpful than Samsara. But in other stuff, if you're going against enemies that aren't shooting at you constantly with rockets, you don't really need arms deal all too much. Samsara is pretty good. So unless you're doing slaughterhouse or something of that nature, I'd recommend 3 in Samsara and 2 arms deal. But if you're doing slaughterhouse or something, 5 in arms deal is necessary. So I will go 3 and 2. 3 into mindfulness, and then 1 into guardian angel. Now, the last one is up to you what you're gonna do with it. I'd recommend Violet Tapestry only if you have a Phase Zerker class one. If you don't have one, try to get one. But until you get one, put the tree really probably into personal space. But if you have the Phase Zerker, put it into Violet Tapestry, because it takes full effect of the Phase Zerker. Now, I'll briefly go over why you're going to be using each thing, each ability. Steady hands really increases accuracy, really good for something like Crossroads. Anima deals better status effect over time. It's, combined with our equipment that I'll be recommending, this is really good, as well as just good in general. Tempest just turns Amara into again, beast elemental damage hunter. Hunter. Wildfire. The only reason we're using Wildfire is because we don't want to do melee damage, and Infusion is bugged. That's really the only reason to use Wildfire. Because we need points into something, you might as well put in a Wildfire. If Infusion wasn't bugged, I'd probably recommend Infusion. As far as I can tell, and as far as most Amara players can tell, Infusion is bugged, and it's not working as how it should be. So for now, don't use Infusion at all. I don't recommend it at all. You're losing damage if you use Infusion. 1 in dread, because if you phase grasp someone, which you're going to be doing a lot, you're just going to melt them. Deep well, better mag, indiscriminate, burns through ads because you're just constantly ricocheting off of enemies, so you're just going to burn through ads. Sustainment is probably the best perk for Amara in this build, because this allows her to just constantly be regenerating health. It's insane how much she regens health because of this one perk alone being maxed out, obviously. Now for inspection, just for bonus damage, Personal space, because with Amara, if you're phase grasping enemies, you're gonna be constantly close to them anyways. So just bonus damage is just it's just helpful. You might as well, because clarity is kind of ass. I wouldn't really recommend it. And then root rise, we're doing 5 on root rise because root rise is pretty good. Yeah, 2 in personal space because you're just doing bonus damage. You're pretty much always in enemies' faces when it comes to ad clearing with Amara. 5 in helping hands to reduce damage. Samsara. Now, Samsara, you're not really getting the full build. You're not getting the full amount you can in a Samsara with this build. If you did, you'd probably use something like Fist Over Matter to proc as much Samsara as you can. But it's still, even with what we're doing now, it's still, we're gonna be regenerating better, doing a little bit more damage. So Samsara is just pretty good. 2 into arm seal because this reduces splash damage, so like nades and rocket launchers. 3 into mindfulness because you just move around so goddamn quickly if you take damage. It's kind of insane. 1 in Guardian Angel because Guardian Angel combined with Resilient means that if with this build you hardly go down anyways, but if you do go down, you just instantly get back up with full health and shields without even having to use without a second win. So it's just really good for this build. The good thing about this build too is it can also do all 3 elements. So Amara has a base element of shock, but because of this build you can also apply corrosive and incendiary. So that's a cool thing. You can switch it if you want. I typically just leave it on shock, just because I personally like shock the best when it comes to ads. As for 1 in Violet Tapestry, with Phase Lurker, the more rush tanks you have, the more damage you do. So you might as well just do 1 into Violet Tapestry to take full effect of the Phase Lurker. Like I said, you really want a Phase Lurker. Now for Amara's equipment, when it comes to clearing ads, the number 1 gun I'd probably recommend is the Brainstormer. It's a world drop, it's not that rare. I've gotten quite a few, to be honest. There's a version that does ×14 damage that is probably better than ×7, but I just typically use the ×7 because it's all I find. But I know there's a ×14, I'd probably recommend that one. But yeah, the Brainstormer is just a beast at clearing ads and keeping you alive with sustainment. If there's a shit ton of ads, not only are you gonna drop them pretty much, you're just not gonna die. That's just how it works with Amara. You're just not gonna die. You literally be in the middle of them, you won't die because of this gun. I use a sellout. It's level 26. It's a dog shit gun by itself, but it does boost damage. I'll explain that in a second. Crossroads. The hostile Crossroads is probably, in my opinion, Amara's best gun. It's a beast for both ad clearing, you know, for stuff like badasses, normal ads, stuff like that, and it's pretty good against bosses. It's actually pretty damn good against bosses. If you get an anointed one, just GG, but mine's not anointed. It's okay. Now for the last one, I typically just use any radiation gun, or sorry, corrosive, just to burn down ads, shields, or the yellow health bar, because you're really just be sticking with these 2, and then this one is just for the yellow health bars. The Cutsman is pretty damn good though. So it doesn't really matter what gun you use for the corrosive damage. I just use the Cutsman because the Cutsman's a beast. If you don't have the Crossroads or the Brainstormer, another gun I recommend is the Nighthawken. The Nighthawken is also world drop, as well as the Crossroads. I don't know if I mentioned this. All of these are world drops, except for this one. This is a side mission. The Nighthawken's a world drop. It's pretty free. I get it pretty frequently. The Ripper is a pretty decent one. Pretty much any gun, really, when it comes to Amara and clearing ads, any gun that does incinerary damage is pretty good for Amara. The Lucian's Call is pretty good. The Laser Exploder is actually really fun and pretty damn good to use. If you can find a butcher that does either shock or incendiary damage, that's also really good for stuff, for normal ads in general, but mainly badasses and like sub bosses. The butcher just shreds them. I personally don't have a incendiary one, but the shock one is also really good. The conference call, sorry, is pretty decent. It's better against bosses usually, and it's usually I only really use it to keep myself alive. I really don't use it anymore, but it's pretty decent if you can find a hostile one. Lyota, not really. The Hellwalker, this is a really good gun for clearing out badasses. Does a lot of damage. It always drops anointed, and I think it's actually really good. But yeah, like I said, any gun that does fire damage to baby maker is also pretty good. Or incendiary rather, is pretty good with Amara. Or shock. Shock is also pretty good with Amara. The reason I say those two is because Amara can do both, and because of this forceful expression, if you have a bunch of fire elements, you can add soul fire and just do bonus damage. I personally just usually leave it on shock just because shock tends to like stun enemies, so I just leave it on shock. But because I'm leaving it on shock, if you have shotguns and you combine it with forceful expression, you're gonna be doing bonus damage, as well as the bonus damage you get from Project Elemental Projector. Now let's get into class mod. Phaserker is really the only thing I can recommend for Amara. There's one called the Nimbus, which is decent, I guess, if you don't have the Phaserker, but Phaserker, you need a Phaserker for Amara. By far her best class mod. It's not that rare. I have a few. I've gotten tons. Keep a few on me depending on what I'm doing. But as for shields, it doesn't truly matter with Amara. I personally use either the Transformer or what's it called? The Recharger. This one doesn't have resistance to anything, which is why I typically don't use it. But any shield really with either shock or incendiary resistance is pretty good for this build. The nade doesn't truly matter as long as it does elemental damage, so you can heal. I just use the cloning hex because I personally like it. I also have a Merv hex which is decent, but cloning hex is just what I use. The Merv hex is better, but I just prefer the cloning hex. As for the artifact, it doesn't really matter which artifact as long as it's Elemental Projector. It's not that rare. I've gotten quite a few purples. I've never gotten a gold one though. But if you can find an Elemental Projector with 183% damage boost, which is, as far as I can tell, the highest one, you'll be golden. Now mine doesn't have the best stats, or rather like sub boosts, but it's still an Elemental Projector nonetheless, and it really helps. Combined with this cello. The reason I use a cello is because it's really the only gun I have from when I was leveling up left over. So you really just want, and it works really well. The cello is probably one of the best guns you can use for damaging yourself to boost your damage. What I mean by this is, if you shoot yourself while you have an elemental projector on, as you can see, while suffering an elemental effect, increase your damage with that same effect by 180%. So if I shoot myself, I'm going to be doing shock and fire damage to myself, because the fire is from the gun and the shock is from my build. I'm just doing shock damage to myself, as well as incendiary. So I'm boosting both of those weapon types. So if I have any shock or incendiary damage guns, I'm getting a 183% damage boost to those guns. What this means is, let's say there's a bunch of mobs right there. Shoot myself, switch to my brainstormer, and then just clear them all out like almost instantly. Or maybe there's a badass. I shoot myself and just drop him my crossroads. Phase grasp him, drop him more.
Time up.
Yeah, but the Elemental Projector is a really good artifact, as well as Phaserker. These two are just a really good in combination. Yeah, that's all I can recommend really for Amara's build. When it comes to Guardian rank, like I said, if you combine it with Resilient, it's really good. So I'd recommend at least getting Resilient for Guardian rank, and then of course doesn't really matter after that. You're not going to be going down that much. This is really just a beast Amara build. You're just a god. You don't die. If you do die, you instantly self-res essentially, full shield and health, and you're just a machine. I'll show some gameplay right now in True on Hunter mode, Mayhem 3, Slaughterhouse, which is some of the hardest endgame content you can play in Borderlands 3. Now for Amara's boss build that I use
like
for
a
bosses
trillion?
when I want to just drop bosses and farm bosses. You'll also be using the orange tree because this tree is really good in general. It's pretty much the same thing actually as the other build. You want 3 Incendiary, 5 in Anima, 5 in Tempest, 1 in Dread, 1 in Wildfire, 3, 5. It's actually the exact same thing as far as this is concerned. Although now you're going to be getting Soulfire, and I'll show you why in a second. Now, you're going to be speccing pretty much solely into this build. If you're going against, let's say you're farming Tyreen. Now you're pretty much in Tyreen's face a lot of the time. You might want personal space. I personally just wouldn't recommend it. So you want 5 into Violet Tapestry, 3 into Transcend, 2 into Restless, 1 into Ascendant, 3 into Fast Hands, 1 more into Restless, 3 into Laid Bare, 3 into Wrath, and then 1 into From Rest. And then you're going to be want to use Deliverance.
Dollars.
Now, reason you're going to be wanting to use this tree as opposed to this tree is because this tree is just really based on stacking Amara's damage and adding Amara's damage. It's really good. It's a really good tree for Amara to do boss damage because you have multiple things that increase her gun damage. So Violet Tapestry at 5 stacks, that's gonna be just doing good damage, especially with Phase Lurker. Fast Hands is just a plus. Do harm. The reason you don't want to do harm is because you're focusing on bosses. You're not really to be killing ads, so getting a rush stack from killing an enemy isn't gonna help here because you're not gonna be killing ads pretty much. Restless, just to get your action skill to cooldown, and if you really wanted to, I guess you can go for reload speed. I personally just don't find it worth it. I'd just rather have Restless. Transcend, because this just allows you to hit something with your action skill and just draw, like add damage. Wrath just adds gun damage, so that's just more damage. Laid Bear adds more damage. Oh, I confused these two. Laid Bear is the one that adds damage. And this is just pretty decent. From Rest, this is fire rate, which is really good for something like the Lyota, which is what this build is kind of based around. But this is the same, so I don't have to go over this again. Now for the action skill augment, I personally either use Soul Trap, or Soul Sap, or Allure. I usually just keep it on Allure just because it really doesn't matter, to be honest. Sometimes I keep it on Soul Sap, but it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. But yeah, either Soul Sap or Allure. And that's gonna be her build. As far as the weapons you're gonna be wanting to use for bosses, you're gonna be wanting to use the Sellout, obviously. The main thing that changes, you know, you're pretty much using the same gear. The only thing that really changes is, where is it? You're gonna want a Lyota. I personally have 3. I have 1 that does shock, 1 and then 2 that do fire. Now, Lyota is a world drop, so if you don't have one, you can just do that 1-0 mission. I forget what it's called, but the Lyota is a guaranteed drop for one of the 0 side quests. So you don't have to worry about that. But if you don't have it, you would really want a fire incendiary damage one or a shock one. Shock one works pretty decent too. I find that I personally just use the incendiary one. Shock one works perfectly fine for Amara. Anything else besides shock or incendiary, I wouldn't really recommend. You're not gonna get the full advantage. And the Lyota is really just probably the best boss killing weapon in the game at this point. Now, another gun that's good is Crossroads, and also the Butcher. Where is it? A Butcher. Now, for something like the Grave War, the Butcher is not going to be helping you out too much. So, if you're farming Grave War, you can use the King's Call if it's incendiary. Now, the King's Call got nerfed recently, and it's not even close to as good as it was, but it's still decent. And it's a boss drop, so if you can't seem to find a Lyota, you can farm the King's Call, and that also works pretty well. As for equipment though, you're going to be wanting to use Phase Zerker to get maximum damage, and then Elemental Projector. The shield really doesn't matter, and the nade doesn't really matter, to be honest. Although when it comes to bosses, except for everything besides Grave Ward, because Grave Ward is just so far away, you can't really throw nades at him. But everything else, I tend to either use Epicenter or Firestorm. Really depends on my mood. But the nade doesn't truly matter when it comes to bosses. But Elemental Projector is a must, and you'll see why in the clip. If you don't want to shoot yourself, pull out the Lyota, which I don't even have equipped, and just go to town on the boss. That's pretty much all you need to know for Amara and her boss damage.